Vamos a dar paso ahora mismo al profesor Doo-Woon. El profesor Doo-Woon es el actual presidente del Comité Científico de ICOMOS para la Fortificación y la Arquitectura Defensiva. Ha sido presidente del Comité de Patrimonio Mundial en Corea. Es profesor de diversas universidades de Corea y tiene una enorme experiencia como evaluador y asesor de UNESCO, trabajando fundamentalmente en montones de procesos de catalogación, de candidaturas, de revisiones, de informes. Por tanto, es una persona muy interesante que además ha estado al frente durante un tiempo de algunos de las fortificaciones coreanas en las que el componente de paisaje territorial es al mismo tiempo un componente esencial para entender el lugar en el que se sitúan las fortificaciones, pero para entender las propias fortificaciones que son parte esencial del paisaje. No son construidas en un paisaje, sino que son el paisaje. Profesor Doo-Woon, cuando quiera, muchas gracias.
Thank you for your introduction. I share my presentation. Can you see that? Good. So, good morning and good afternoon, dear distinguished guests and Spanish and international guests, scholars expert. My name is Doo-Woon Cho from Republic of Korea. I'm currently serving as president of ICOMOS-ICOFORT and also board member of ICOMOS. At this place, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to the Spanish Cultural Heritage Institute for invitation to this valuable international symposiums on the reformulation of the protective environment in webinar, fortification, and landscape. Especially, it is great honor for me to be with Professor Bandarin. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. At this place, I am very pleased to share with you all how to identify and preserve and utilize military cultural landscape with the help of ICOMOS guideline on fortification and military heritage.
Excuse me.
So,
we
yes.
can see the full screen.
You have no full screen?
No.
No? Just a moment. Do you have?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay. So, as president of ICOMOS-ICOFORT, I want to share how ICOFORT, as the scientific committee of ICOMOS, serves ICOMOS technically, desk review and technical evaluation mission, reactive monitoring, upstream process related to the UNESCO World Heritage are the representative technical function to ICOMOS. ICOFORT is operated based on the triennial plan 2022 to 2025. The ICOFORT has currently 165 members, including one institutional member. So furthermore, a number of conservation issues confronting climate change or armed conflict in specific geographical scenarios related to fortification and military heritage have multiplied in various, inevitable, and unpredictable ways. A large number of significant fortification and military heritage initiatives to establish a conservation subcommittee in ICOFORT. ICOFORT researches and promote the understanding, protection, conservation, exposing, and management of historic fortifications and military heritage, including tangible and intangible, historical, architectural, artistic, and scientific values, which include structures, landscapes, and water areas, commemorative monuments, and military memorabilia, intangible heritages. Now you can see the procedure of the ICOMOS guidelines and fortification and military heritage, how it was initiated, developed, revised, and finally adopted during the ICOMOS General Assembly 2021. You can see the whole process on the screen. Thanks to main editor, our ICOFORT Vice President Fernando Cobos, who is now attending as main coordinator for this international symposium. Latest ICOFORT charter editing members are on the list. ICOMOS guidelines on fortification and military heritage consist of the preamble, objectives, principles, and references. In detail, definition, characteristics, and theoretical and methodological values and intervention are classified as important articles, especially ICOMOS guideline explain military cultural landscape and its value in the definitions, characteristics, theoretical, and methodological principles should be highlighted in this presentation. Most of all, the definition of cultural landscape should be shortly explained before military cultural landscape is beginning. World Heritage Operational Guidelines in 2023, paragraph 47, explains cultural landscape that are combined works of nature and of man. They embrace the interaction between humankind and its natural environment and reflect specific techniques of sustainable land use, considering the characteristic and limit of natural environment they are established in, and a specific spiritual relation to nature. In this context, the fortification military heritage, including military cultural landscape, are interpreted as a major link to the history of human settlement, nations, and regions. From prehistory to modern times, fortification have been a necessity for human communities to defend themselves. Fortification have also been integrated into the surrounding cultural landscape and terrain and their respective communities and settlement in a variety of ways. As complex fortification structures, their surrounding cultural landscape should be considered to identify and preserve. Military cultural landscape are not limited to include territorial or coastal defense installations and earthwork. They have values similar to other heritage buildings and sites, but also possess unique values that need to be carefully studied, analyzed, and preserved. That's why fortifications, more than many other types of architecture, have an integral relationship with the surrounding cultural landscape. The main functional attributes that make up the military cultural landscape, which are interpreted as the result of military actions and interactions with nature for the purpose of fulfilling a specific purpose, are barrier and protection, command, depth, flanking, and deterrence. Barrier and protection is a primary attribute to protect human activity and settlement against any external threat with the ability to resist attack. While the firearms, such as a matchlock and artillery from cold weapons, such as bows and spears, were introduced into the battlefield, the height of the watchtower that were located in the castle or fortress was lowered, and the wall was transformed from earthen to stone in order to effectively withstand artillery fire. There were also variations of fortress wall construction. Only one side of the enemy camp was built with a stone wall, and the inside of the stone fortress wall was composed of parapet with a covered waist on the earthwork. And both sided stone walls inside and outside the fortress wall was also built in order to withstand effectively. Furthermore, the fortress was densely fortified on the main enemy's approaching route. When forming a fortification system, the defense facilities are stacked to prevent the enemy from approaching as much as possible. It is also used to attack preemptively. Natural rivers or man-made ditches or moats were used to clearly define the boundaries on both sides. The island and the coastline, including cliffs, and the entire island were used to develop fortification that served as independent fortresses. According to the operation of cold weapons and gunpowder weapons, the defense network is differently formed, and the places where the enemy frequently invades are overlapped to create a defensive network. Command is the ability to monitor the area surrounding the defended zone as far as possible, and to prevent the attacker from approaching. No matter how well constructed a fortification is, it is useless if there is no command and control system to perform its functions properly. The operation of a command post that inside and outside of the fortification, direct communication between each fortification and the establishment of a watchtower for communication or indirect signaling are essential elements in the fortification system. Depth is a defense concept that provides defensive depth to prevent the enemy from easily attacking and to enable siege and annihilation even when attacked. Examples include front work, outposts, moats, trenches, and foxholes, which are representative shielding facilities installed outside the fortress walls to prevent enemy forces from rushing into the fortress walls and gates. These include the drawbridge, which intermittently connects the outer and inner castle gate, the gate tower on top of the drawbridge, and the sentry towers for defense on both sides. Flanking largely strengthened the defense system by installing separate military facilities on the flanks to protect the main fortification that performs the command and control function. In order to effectively observe the enemy's movement in detail, gaps in the defense network are made up for by installing watchtowers on key terrain or installing lookouts to protect a blind spot that are difficult to observe from the fortress walls. In addition, the auxiliary gate, so to speak, secret gate, allows friendly troops to enter and exit the fortress secretly, avoiding enemy's observation. And in case of emergency, troops are sent outside to conduct ambushes and reconnaissance. Deterrence is a defensive strategy used to deter the enemy from attacking by instilling doubt or fear of the consequences. This strategy can include a range of tactics, including the construction of the majestic enclosure and its defensive attribute. For example, multiple openings for shooting, scales of gate and towers, decoration of walls and entrance play important role for deterrence. Wooden fences installed near the castle, parapets around the top of the fortress walls, anti-tank obstacles constantly installed on the front lines and enemy approaches, mines and barbed wire fences are the means of deterrence. And all these facilities are included in the battlefield and constitute a military cultural landscape. The 5 attributes set forth in the ICOMOS guideline on fortification military heritage are constructed through accurate analysis and adaptation of the natural environment, which can be interpreted to be very important technical attribute in describing the military cultural landscape. So the military cultural landscape has documentary value as a built structure. It represents architectural, technological, artistic, and historic values related to the event that led to its cultural landscape over the time. There is also the value of military cultural landscape seen as system as the organizer of the territories. The recognition of such intrinsic values of military cultural landscape determines the extent to which these aspects condition their conservation, rehabilitation, and general value. The value of the cultural landscape allows a better understanding of the material and functional context of fortification and takes into account, among other elements, respect for its enclave, the role of military construction for defensive purposes, its dominant position, visual and physical elements in relation to the surrounding territories. In this sense, the Dutch water defense lines are an example of a military cultural landscape that actively utilizes the water environment to create defense facilities. The Dutch water defense lines are a defense system that extends more than 200 kilometers along the edge of the capital, Amsterdam, the political and economic center of the Netherlands, and consists of the new Dutch water line and Amsterdam defense line. As a background to the creation of the Dutch water defense lines, firstly, many rivers flow in the Netherlands and many lakes and swamps are distributed near the water defense lines. The experience of building embankment and reclaiming land for several centuries since the 16th century has resulted in the creation of many flat lowlands that has been formed. Second, major cities such as Amsterdam, The Hague, Dordrecht, Leiden, Alkmaar, and Haarlem, the economic political centers of the Netherlands, were located in State Holland, making it almost impossible to conquer the entire Netherlands without conquering them. Therefore, a large-scale flooding system was built to protect Holland and ultimately Amsterdam, and Dutch water defenses were successful. It can be said to be an artificial military cultural landscape that deterred and delayed enemy invasion by applying the principle of temporary flooding of the land to form an insurmountable barrier and formed a mutual cooperation system to protect Amsterdam. Masada is in Israel, is a natural fortress constructed on a rocky hill overlooking the Dead Sea in the wilderness. Masada is the site of a royal palace built by King Herod of Judah in the style of early Roman empires. The ruins are also the site of the Jewish resistance of the ancient kingdom of Israel against the Roman attack in 73 AD, where the Jewish resistance fought its final decisive battle and met its end. Built using the flat terrain of the mountaintop, the Masada was built to perform military functions. This is one of the best uses of the natural advantage. The wall built on sheer natural cliff made it difficult for enemies to approach and promoted the preconceived notion that it was visually impregnable, thereby increasing combat deterrence. It is military cultural landscape and as a relic that makes full use of the natural environment and preserve the aspect of attacks and defenses between the conqueror and the conquered. Along the borders of the east, west, and north of France, it is the fortified structures inside of the fortification of Bourbon, composed of the 12 ensembles. The fortification of Bourbon, created by the architect of the Louis XIV, the Sébastien Le Prestre Bourbon, were one of the most outstanding installations of the fortification, and until the mid-19th century, they had a great influence on the construction of fortifications in Europe and other continents. Especially the Citadel Blaye, Fort Bat, and Fort Médord are strategically constructed defensive structures at the mouth of Gironde River, flowing to the Atlantic coast. They were organically linked together to act as a defense, a perimeter and a gateway, as well as they were the first line of defense against enemy forces approaching to the mouth of the Gironde River from the Atlantic. If this defense line was destroyed, the city of Bordeaux, the center of the Bourbon dynasty in the 17th century, would be in a precarious state. So it was an example of creating a 2 or 3 layered defense system. They are one of the representative examples of the military cultural landscape that showed the development of Europe in the 17th century as a continuous border defense system that cannot be separated from the original function of military heritage and the barrier and protection, command, depth, flanking, and deterrence. Since the Three Kingdoms period from the 2nd century BC to 7th century AD in Korean Peninsula, it has been a major strategic point for the Hangang River basin, and during the Joseon Dynasty, it was a guardian landscape and a refuge fortress that served as the hinterland of the Hanyang-Joseon capital city wall. In other words, it can be said it is a representative example of an associative landscape, which was decisive evidence of the urban defense system in Korean history. In addition, King Jeongjo and Yeongjo of the Joseon Dynasty and many others during 17th to 18th century left the landscape of mountain in poetry. And this result is interpreted as an example of further enhancing the intangible value of capital fortification of Hanyang, including the Bukhansansong mountain fortress. The area around the Hanyang-Joseon capital city wall, Dangchun-daesong defense wall, and Bukhansansong mountain fortress are equipped with a defense system in case of emergency due to the function of the capital city of Seoul. Up to now, there are military posts and military units stationed in the Bugaksan mountain area of Hanyang-Joseon capital city wall and inside the Dangchun-daesong defense wall. And in the case of Bukhansansong mountain fortress, military units are located nearby to perform defensive functions in case of emergency. So it is an organically evolved landscape. In the case of demilitarized zone, DMZ, on the Korean Peninsula, as a system of military facilities that have been in conflict with each other for more than 70 years since the Korean War. The natural environment, including the human environment and the ecosystem that was free from human development, is well preserved. And it has a symbolic meaning as a result of the Cold War in terms of international history, as well as natural heritage value. DMZ on the Korean Peninsula is a military cultural landscape that is currently valued as a sustainable landscape in which the military operational zone changes or evolves. And it is interpreted as a heritage of memory in terms of the division of Korean Peninsula and international history with the length of the 248 kilometers from east to west. However, the research and survey method on the value of DMZ on the Korean Peninsula in terms of cultural heritage and natural heritage that is currently being carried out through the government of the Republic of Korea should be formed a consensus on the North Korean side. And it is a military cultural landscape with outstanding universal value and common heritage of humanity. So since the introduction of the UNESCO World Heritage System, there have been active exchanges and dialogues between countries, regions for the operation of this system. And the dynamic process and result of these activities have diversified the categories of World Heritage Site. Through this presentation, we studied the direction of establishing the values of military cultural landscape and possible cases of their use, as suggested in the ICOMOS guideline on fortification and military heritage, adopted in 2021 through ICOMOS. in consideration of the connection with the World Heritage cultural landscape as combined works of nature and of man, which reflect the specific techniques of sustainable land use considering the characteristic and limits of natural environment they are established in and a specific spiritual relation to nature. Furthermore, there are many sites that have potential values as a military cultural landscape characterized by the main technical attributes of barrier and protection, command, depth, flanking, and deterrence. However, they are threatened with damage worldwide. In particular areas where urbanization is progressing, the integrity of heritage is being rapidly damaged. By sharing knowledge and experience gained in the field of cultural landscapes, it is necessary to preserve the attributes that reflect the value of military cultural landscapes and preserve and manage cultural, historical, and natural environment that is organically integrated with them. Lastly, opportunities should be provided for communities, those who live in and around these military cultural landscapes, and diverse communities to participate in all stages of research and identification of the value of military cultural landscape, their conservation and management and utilization. Therefore, it will be possible to sustainably conserve and manage the military cultural landscape. Thank you for attention. Muchas gracias.